I left work earlier than usual that day, and I couldn't help but smile at the thought of surprising Daniel. The drive home felt lighter, almost like I was carrying a secret gift in my chest. I pictured his face when I walked through the door, the way his eyebrows would lift in that startled but warm way. Maybe we'd throw something together for dinner, laugh about nothing, and feel like us again. I tapped the steering wheel in rhythm with the radio, completely unaware of the storm waiting at home. I thought I was walking into comfort, but instead, I walked straight into suspicion. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside wasn't Daniel's smile or his voice calling from the living room. It was silence, thick, almost too careful. The kitchen drew me in like a magnet. That's when I saw them. 2 wine glasses sitting in the sink, droplets still sliding down the glass like they hadn't been there long. My chest tightened instantly. We didn't drink wine during the week. That was our thing. Weekends, birthdays, anniversaries. Not a random Tuesday night. Something felt off. I stepped closer, my breath catching, my fingers brushing against the rim of one of the glasses. Cool, damp, fresh. My mind began racing, each possibility stabbing harder than the last. I whispered to myself, barely audible. 2 glasses. But we don't even drink wine during the week, and I wasn't here. My stomach sank as the words tasted bitter in my mouth. I straightened, louder now, letting my voice cut through the quiet house. "Daniel, are you home?" That's when I heard footsteps, slow, startled, and my heart skipped a beat. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his expression caught somewhere between surprise and discomfort. "Oh, you're back early. Didn't expect you," he said, a nervous laugh hanging at the edge of his voice. I studied his face, the way his eyes darted past me, anywhere but the sink. My pulse was pounding in my ears, but I forced a smile, thin and fragile. "Who are you drinking with?" I asked, careful to keep my tone steady, even though suspicion had already taken root inside me. He moved quickly, too quickly, stepping toward the counter like he could shield me from the truth with his body. "No one," he replied, shaking his head. "Just me. I had 2 glasses, that's all." The words tumbled out of him like a rehearsed excuse. Too polished, too ready. I let silence stretch between us, watching him squirm. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoided my eyes, the way he always did when he was hiding something. My instincts screamed at me, louder than his words. I wanted to snap, to call him out right then and there, but instead, I took a breath and softened my face. There was power in holding back, in letting him believe he'd gotten away with it. For now. 2 glasses, Daniel?" I repeated, letting the question linger. He nodded too quickly, too eagerly, like a man drowning who had just spotted land. I gave a small shrug, as if to say I believed him, but inside I was already filing the moment away. The glasses had betrayed him, and I wasn't about to forget. I walked past him slowly, pretending to be distracted by my bag, my shoes, anything but the storm inside me. But every sound felt sharper, the creak of the floorboards, the faint clink of the glasses in the sink, the way his breath caught when I got too close. I wanted to believe him, I really did. After all, love makes you want to trust, even when the evidence cuts right in front of you. Yet something in his tone, in the way he rushed his words, gnawed at me. Dinner that night felt off. He talked about work, about how his day had been long, about a project I barely followed. I nodded in the right places, but my eyes kept drifting back to his hands, his lips, the slight tremor in his voice. He wouldn't look at me directly, not for long. I forced myself to laugh at his jokes, to carry on like everything was normal. Inside, though, I was unraveling piece by piece. The image of those wine glasses burned into my mind. Lying in bed later, I replayed every detail in the darkness. The cool rim under my fingers, his startled face. The way he denied it so fast, too fast. He was hiding something. I felt it deep in my bones. And if he thought I'd just let it go, he didn't know me as well as he thought. I stayed silent, but my mind was already moving, already sharpening. The glasses had opened a door I could never close again, and the first lie was waiting just around the corner. The rest of the evening dragged, heavy with silence that neither of us dared to break. But I couldn't let it go, not when the image of those two glasses was still fresh in my mind. Later, as we sat in the living room, I turned to him, my voice calm but cutting. "Daniel, stop lying," I said, my eyes locked on his. Two glasses, both wet. Someone was here. My heart pounded as I watched his reaction, searching for the crack in his mask. His jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffened, and then came the defense. "Why are you always suspicious?" he snapped, frustration lacing his words. "Can a man enjoy wine alone?" The tone was sharper than before, almost rehearsed, like he'd been preparing it in his head. I didn't flinch, though. I leaned back, arms crossed, letting him squirm under the weight of his own denial. Every syllable felt like a wall he was building, but I could already see the cracks forming. I raised an eyebrow, my voice low and cold. "You expect me to believe you poured yourself 2 glasses at once?" The question hung between us like smoke, impossible to ignore. His face flushed with anger, and his voice rose. "You're paranoid, Hannah. This is why I don't tell you things." His words hit sharp, but I didn't answer. I let silence wrap around me like armor, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a fight. Inside, though, I knew. This wasn't just about wine. It was about secrets, and I was ready to uncover them. I sat there staring at him, watching his chest rise and fall too quickly. The louder he became, the calmer I forced myself to be. That calm wasn't forgiveness, it was strategy. I'd learned long ago that silence could be sharper than any accusation. He mistook my quiet for surrender, and I saw the relief flicker across his face, like he believed his outburst had shut me down. But inside, I was collecting every word, every twitch, every tell. He tried to shift the conversation, babbling about his workload, about stress, about how I never trusted him enough. I nodded slowly, but my eyes betrayed me. I couldn't hide the steel in them. He looked away, muttering under his breath, his voice carrying more guilt than anger now. My hands tightened against the armrest, nails digging into the fabric, but I stayed still. If he thought his excuses could wash away the truth, he didn't realize I had already seen it in his eyes. In that moment, I made a choice. I wasn't going to beg for answers or cry for honesty. No, I was going to play along, let him believe his lie had worked, let him keep building that fragile wall of denial. Because walls, eventually, collapse. And when his did, I wanted to be standing right there to watch it fall. My lips curved into a small, controlled smile, and I whispered, almost to myself, "All right, Daniel. We'll see." That night, I lay in bed beside him, his steady breathing pretending to be the sound of peace. But I knew better. Every exhale felt staged, every shift of his body rehearsed, like he was playing a role he wasn't quite comfortable in. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows on the walls twisting like unspoken truths. The silence between us was louder than any argument could have been. I could feel the lie sitting between us, heavy and undeniable. I thought about the way he snapped at me, the way he tried to twist suspicion into paranoia. Classic deflection. I'd read about it, heard about it, but never imagined it would play out in my own marriage. My heart ached, yes, but beneath the ache was a sharper edge. Resolve. If he thought I would shrink under his accusations, he had underestimated me. I was done asking nicely, done waiting for honesty that would never come. So I kept my lips sealed, playing the role of the quiet, trusting wife. Let him think I'd let it go. Let him believe the performance he put on. Because in that quiet, I was already planning. Not just to catch him, but to catch him in a way he couldn't deny, couldn't spin. couldn't escape. The glasses had been the first sign. His lie was the second. And soon enough I'd have all the proof I needed to tear his world apart. The next few days I became an observer in my own home. I watched Daniel with a quiet patience that he mistook for forgiveness. But really, I was noticing the little things, the receipts he stuffed in his wallet, the way his phone never left his side, the sudden late nights at work that didn't match his calendar. Every inconsistency was like a breadcrumb, and I was determined to follow the trail. I wasn't looking for guesses anymore. I wanted facts. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I slipped my hand into his jacket pocket and found a crumpled receipt. It wasn't from the grocery store like he'd claimed. It was from a small restaurant across town. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine. My stomach clenched, but my face stayed composed. He hadn't even tried to cover his tracks well. That arrogance, that carelessness, told me everything I needed to know. He thought I'd never dig deeper. He thought I'd stay blind. That same evening, I called Clara, my best friend, the one person I trusted enough to share the truth with. Sitting in her kitchen, coffee between us, I finally said the words out loud. No. I know he's seeing someone. Clara's eyes widened, her hand reaching for mine. "What will you do?" she asked softly. And in that moment, a smile crept across my lips, sharper than any blade. "Wait, watch, then strike where it hurts most." Clara looked at me like she wanted to protest, but she knew better. She'd seen that look in my eyes before, the one that meant I wasn't backing down. "Hannah," she whispered, "this could get ugly." I squeezed her hand and nodded. "It already is." Saying it out loud gave me strength. I wasn't the woman waiting for crumbs of truth anymore. I was the woman who would dig, uncover, and hold it in my hands. And when the time was right, I'd make sure Daniel felt the weight of it. The next morning, I made my decision. I called a private investigator. My voice didn't tremble, not once. Explaining my suspicions felt strangely empowering, like taking back control one word at a time. The man on the other end listened carefully, promised discretion, and asked for the details he needed. I gave him everything: Daniel's schedule, his favorite excuses, the places he claimed to be. Hanging up, I felt a cold steadiness settle into me. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was preparation. While Daniel thought he was living 2 lives, I was already 1 step ahead. I played the part of the trusting wife flawlessly, smiling at dinner, listening to his stories, even leaning in for a kiss I didn't feel. He believed he'd fooled me, and that belief made him careless. The truth, I knew, would come sooner than he expected, and when it did, I would be ready, not to cry, not to beg, but to strike. It didn't take long. Just a week later, the investigator slid an envelope across my kitchen table. My hands trembled as I opened it, but not from fear. This was anticipation, the final step before the truth broke wide open. Inside were photos, grainy but undeniable. Daniel, arm draped casually over a woman I recognized from his office, the 2 of them laughing over drinks, their bodies leaning too close to pretend. Every picture was a dagger, but each one also fueled my resolve. I traced the lipstick mark on her glass in one photo, my stomach twisting with a mix of rage and clarity. So this was it. The reason for the lies, the tension, the sudden late nights. It wasn't me. It was never me. And strangely, that realization didn't crush me. It lit something inside me instead. A fire, sharp and deliberate. I wasn't powerless anymore. I had proof. Proof he couldn't run from, deny, or gaslight me into doubting. Clara sat across from me, her eyes wide as she flipped through the evidence. "What will you do now?" she asked. I leaned back, letting the smallest, coldest smile play on my lips. "I'll wait for the right moment," I whispered. and when it comes, he won't see it coming. The glasses had started this story, but these photos, these were the beginning of the end. The night I chose was ordinary on the surface, just a quiet evening at home, no special occasion, nothing that would make him suspicious. I set the dining table with deliberate care, placing 2 wine glasses at the center like silent actors waiting for their cue. The very same scene I had stumbled upon weeks ago. My hands didn't shake this time. Instead, they moved with precision, like I was staging a performance for an audience of one. When Daniel walked in, he looked tired, unsuspecting, loosening his tie as he kissed the air near my cheek. I gestured for him to sit, my voice calm, almost warm. He smiled faintly, still oblivious, still believing in his illusion of control. The meal was simple, but it wasn't the food that mattered. It was what sat in the envelope by his plate, tucked neatly, waiting for the right moment. I sipped my water and let silence stretch long enough for him to notice. Finally, I slid the envelope across the table, my eyes never leaving his. "Remember these?" I asked, pulling out the photographs, placing them face up beside his plate. His head snapped down, his face draining of color. One photo, then another, then another. Each one a nail in the coffin of his lies. His fork clattered against the plate, and for the first time he didn't have a ready excuse. Watching him unravel was almost poetic. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out at first, just a shallow breath, the sound of someone caught between denial and panic. "Hannah, please, this was a mistake," he stammered, his voice breaking as he reached for the photos. I pulled them back before his fingers touched them, holding the evidence like a shield. "Mistakes," I said coolly, "don't last for months. Mistakes don't leave lipstick stains on my glasses." My tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. Calm was more dangerous than shouting. His eyes darted from me to the table, desperate for something to hold on to. "She means nothing," he blurted out, shaking his head. "It's you I love, always you." The words sounded hollow, stripped of the conviction they once carried. I leaned forward, my elbows on the table, my gaze locked on him. "If she means nothing," I asked softly, "then why does every lie you've told point straight to her?" His throat bobbed as he swallowed, his silence more damning than any confession. I could see the sweat forming on his brow, his hands trembling as he tried to hold himself together. But the truth was already laid bare between us, and nothing he said could stitch it back together. I let him twist in that silence, the photos still spread like evidence in a trial. He begged, his words tumbling over themselves, but I had already crossed the threshold in my heart. This wasn't about saving us anymore. It was about ending him on my terms. He leaned forward then, desperation dripping from every gesture. "We can fix this, Hannah. I'll end it." "I'll do whatever you want. Just don't give up on us." His words felt cheap, like counterfeit bills passed off as currency. Once they might have broken me, but now they only fueled my clarity. I shook my head slowly, savoring the power shift. "No, Daniel. You already decided what we are, and I won't beg for scraps." He reached across the table, his hand trembling as if touch alone could erase betrayal. I pulled mine back deliberately, letting the rejection sting him more than any slap could. "You built this lie," I said, my voice steady, "and you thought I'd never see it. But Daniel, I saw everything." His lips parted, searching for one more excuse, one more shield, but nothing came. The silence was louder than his promises. I gathered the photos calmly, tucking them back into the envelope as he sat there hollow-eyed. This was no longer a marriage. It was a courtroom, and I was both judge and jury. The wine glasses glistened in the dim light between us, reminders of the moment his secret first cracked open. He thought this was the end of the confrontation, but he was wrong. This was only the beginning. My revenge had been waiting in the wings, and now it was almost time to step into the spotlight. The morning after our confrontation, I made a phone call I'd been preparing in silence. My lawyer's voice on the other end was calm, efficient, almost comforting. "Do you have the proof?" he asked. I opened the envelope, fanned out the photographs across my desk, and smiled to myself. I have more than enough. The contract Daniel had signed years ago, the non-infidelity clause, was no longer just a line on paper. It was the weapon that would strip him of everything. Walking into the lawyer's office, I felt no nerves, only a cool certainty. Every detail I'd gathered, every photo, every lie I had endured was now ammunition. My lawyer slid the paperwork toward me, tapping where my signature was needed. "With this," he said, "all assets transfer to you. Daniel doesn't have a leg to stand on." I signed without hesitation, the pen gliding smoothly, each stroke sealing his fate. There was no tremor in my hand, only satisfaction. By the time I returned home, Daniel was pacing the living room, his eyes red, his face drawn. He stopped when he saw the papers in my hand, his chest heaving. "What did you do?" he demanded, voice cracking between anger and panic. I laid the folder on the coffee table and met his gaze, unflinching. "I didn't do anything, Daniel," I said softly. "You did this to yourself, the moment you poured that second glass." His face crumbled, and for the first time I felt free. His voice rose, desperate now, words spilling without control. "You can't take everything from me. This is my house, my money, my life." He sounded less like a husband and more like a child robbed of his favorite toy. I stood there, calm, letting his rage wash over me like meaningless noise. "No, Daniel," I said evenly. "It was our life, and you traded it away for someone else's lipstick and lies." Watching him flinch at my words felt like justice being served. The lawyer arrived later that afternoon, briefcase in hand, documents in order. He explained everything to Daniel with clinical precision, each clause tightening like a noose. Daniel's face paled as he realized there was no loophole, no escape, no excuse that could undo the mess he'd created. I sat on the couch, legs crossed, sipping water while the man who once held all the control watched it crumble beneath him. The power shift was complete, undeniable. When the lawyer left, Daniel collapsed onto the armchair, his head buried in his hands. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, a shadow of the man he once pretended to be. I felt no pity, only release. "Pack your things," I told him quietly, my voice firm but not cruel. "You have no place here anymore." He stared at me in disbelief, but there was nothing left for him to argue. The papers spoke louder than his words ever could. I watched him gather his things, each movement weighed down by anger and disbelief. The man who once strutted around this house now shuffled like an intruder, clutching bags that seemed far too small to carry the wreckage of his mistakes. He muttered under his breath, curses aimed at me, at the world, but never at himself. That silence, the refusal to own his betrayal, was the only confirmation I needed that he'd never change, and that was exactly why he had to go. When the door finally closed behind him, the house exhaled with me. The quiet wasn't suffocating anymore. It was liberating, a space finally mine again. I walked into the kitchen, the very place where suspicion first took root, and reached for a bottle of wine. Only one glass waited on the counter this time. I poured carefully, the deep red catching the light as I lifted it to my lips. The taste was sharp, bold, victorious. I raised the glass in a silent toast, not to Daniel, not to what we had lost, but to myself. To the woman who refused to be fooled, who turned betrayal into power, who reclaimed everything piece by piece. My reflection in the window smiled back at me, steady and unbroken. I whispered, "Here's to freedom," and took another sip, savoring it like the sweetest revenge. The story had started with 2 glasses, but it ended with just one. Mine.